Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the big screen in front of him. What he saw made his heart beat fast. Thousands of alien ships were coming down from space toward Earth. They looked like giant metal birds with sharp edges and bright lights. The ships were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Jake counted them quickly in his head and felt sick. There were at least 3,000 enemy ships coming down through the clouds. Jake was the commander of the Earth ship called Valiant. His ship was good, but it was just one ship among the 200 ships that Earth had sent to fight. 200 ships against 3,000 did not seem like good odds. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. The alien ships moved in perfect lines like they were dancing in the sky. Each ship was the size of a city block, and they all glowed with a cold blue light. Amy Collins sat at her desk on the bridge and watched her computer screens. She was in charge of talking to other ships and receiving messages. Amy had short brown hair and wore the blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force. She had been working with Jake for 5 years and had never seen him look so worried before. The aliens were sending them a message, and Amy pressed some buttons to put it on the main screen. The screen flickered and then showed the face of an alien creature. The alien was tall and thin with gray skin that looked like metal. His eyes were large and completely black. He wore armor that changed colors as he moved. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass mixed with thunder. The alien said his name was High Admiral Vexitharian, and that he came from something called the Galactic Dominion. The alien commander spoke in perfect English, which surprised Jake. How did this creature know their language so well? Vexitharian told them that humans were not wanted in the galaxy anymore. He said that Earth and all the people on it would be destroyed unless they gave up right now. The alien promised that if humans surrendered, he would kill them quickly without making them suffer. He said this like he was being kind and generous. Jake felt anger rise up in his chest, but he kept his voice calm when he answered. He told the alien that Earth would not surrender, and that humans would fight to protect their home. Jake had been born on Earth and had lived there his whole life. His wife and 2 children were down on the planet right now, probably watching the alien ships come down from the sky. He would not let anything happen to them or to the billions of other people who called Earth their home. The alien commander laughed at Jake's words. His laugh was a horrible sound that made everyone on the bridge feel cold inside. Vexitharian said that humans were like children who did not understand how big and dangerous the universe really was. He said that the Galactic Dominion had destroyed hundreds of worlds, and that Earth would be just another easy victory for them. Then the alien cut off the communication, and the screen went black. Jake turned to look at his crew. There were 12 people on the bridge, and they all looked scared but determined. These were good people who had trained for years to defend Earth. Jake knew that they would fight as hard as they could even though the odds were terrible. He opened a channel to talk to all the other Earth ships and told them to get ready for battle. Far below them on Earth, something strange was happening. Deep under the Pacific Ocean, in a place so deep that no human had ever been there, something was waking up. The water down there was always dark and cold, and nothing lived there except for tiny creatures that glowed in the dark. But now lights were turning on in the deep water, lights that had been off for thousands and thousands of years. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was sitting in her office at the Ocean Research Center in California. She was looking at her computer when numbers started appearing that made no sense. Elena had been studying earthquakes and ocean movements for 15 years, but she had never seen readings like these before. The machines were telling her that something huge was moving on the ocean floor, something that was giving off more energy than a nuclear power plant. Elena called her assistant and told him to check the machines because they must be broken. But all the machines were working fine. The readings were real. Something massive was down there in the deepest part of the ocean, and it was coming to life. Elena grabbed her phone and started calling other scientists around the world. They all had the same readings. Every ocean monitoring station on Earth was detecting the same impossible energy signals. Up in space, the alien ships had spread out and were getting ready to attack Earth's cities. Vexitharian was standing on his command deck feeling very pleased with himself. He had conquered many worlds before, and Earth would be no different. The humans had primitive weapons and small ships. This would be over in a few hours. and then he could return home with news of another victory. But then something went wrong with the alien ship's computers. Warning lights started flashing and alarms began making loud noises. The ship's science officer ran up to Vexitharian and told him that their sensors were detecting something impossible. There was massive energy coming from the planet below them, energy that was stronger than their own ship's power source. Vexitharian looked at the readings and felt confused. According to their information, Earth was a primitive world with no advanced technology. The humans barely had space travel and their weapons were simple. There should not be anything on that planet that could produce this much energy. The science officer said the energy was coming from deep under the ocean and that it was getting stronger every minute. On Earth, the ocean began to move in ways that defied explanation. Waves formed perfect circles around one spot in the Pacific. The water started to glow with a soft green light that could be seen from space. Sea creatures fled in all directions as if they sensed something dangerous was coming. The temperature of the water began to rise even though nothing visible was, causing it to heat up. Nick Carter was the captain of a research ship called Deep Explorer. He had been studying the ocean for most of his adult life and thought he knew everything about what lived in the deep water. But today, the ocean was doing things that he had never seen before. His ship was floating above the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean when his sonar equipment started going crazy. The machine was showing him that something enormous was rising up from the bottom of the sea. Nick called his first officer, Lisa Monroe, to come look at the sonar screen. Lisa had been working on research ships for 10 years, but when she saw the readings, she could not believe what the machines were telling them. Something the size of a city was coming up from the ocean floor. It was rising slowly but steadily toward the surface. The object was perfectly smooth and seemed to be made of metal that did not appear in any of their databases. Lisa grabbed the radio and tried to call the Coast Guard to report what they were seeing. But when she turned on the radio, all she could hear was static and strange humming sounds. Every communication channel was filled with the same weird noise. It was like something was interfering with all the radio waves in the area. Nick tried to use the satellite phone, but it was not working either. They were completely cut off from the rest of the world. High above them in space, the alien fleet was having problems of their own. High Admiral Vexitharian was standing on his command bridge watching his officers run around trying to fix their weapons. Every gun on every ship had stopped working at exactly the same moment. The energy cannons would not fire. The missile launchers would not open. Even the small defense guns were completely dead. It was like something had reached into their ships and turned everything off. The alien science officer was reading numbers from his computer that made no sense. He told Vexitharian that there was some kind of field coming from the planet that was interfering with their quantum power systems. The field was so strong that it was shutting down their weapons and making their engines work poorly. The science officer had never seen anything like it in 30 years of space travel. Vexitharian felt fear creep into his mind for the first time in many years. He had conquered 17 different worlds for the Galactic Dominion. He had destroyed civilizations that had thousands of years of advanced technology. But he had never encountered anything that could simply turn off his weapons from a distance. His ships were built with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Nothing should be able to interfere with their systems so easily. Back on Earth, the thing rising from the ocean finally broke through the surface of the water. Nick and Lisa watched in amazement as a structure appeared that was bigger than any building they had ever seen. It was shaped like a pyramid, but with sides that seemed to curve and twist in ways that hurt their eyes to look at. The surface was covered with patterns that moved and changed even though the structure itself was not moving. The structure was made of a material that looked like metal but reflected light in impossible ways. Sometimes it looked silver and sometimes it looked like it was made of liquid starlight. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared on its surface. The symbols were not like any writing that humans had ever created. They seemed to exist in 3 dimensions and moved around the surface of the structure like living things. As the structure rose higher out of the water, the ocean around it began to behave strangely. The waves formed perfect circles that spread out in all directions. The water closest to the structure turned a bright blue color and started to glow. Fish that had lived in the deep ocean for millions of years came to the surface and swam in organized patterns around the base of the structure. Then something happened that changed everything. A voice spoke that every person on Earth could hear inside their head. The voice did not come through radios or televisions or phones. It came directly into their minds. The voice was neither male nor female, and it sounded older than mountains. It spoke in every language at the same time, so that everyone could understand it perfectly no matter where they were from. The voice said that it was the keeper of this world. It had been sleeping for a very long time but had woken up because Earth was in danger. The voice explained that it had been left behind by an ancient race to protect the planet and all the life on it. It had been waiting and watching for millions of years. Now that alien invaders had come to destroy Earth, it was time for the Keeper to fulfill its purpose. Jake Harrison heard the voice on his ship and felt his mouth fall open in surprise. Every person on his crew was staring at each other with wide eyes. They had all heard the same voice speaking inside their heads. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years, but nothing in his training had prepared him for something like this. He tried to contact Earth Command to ask for orders, but his communications were still filled with that strange humming sound. The alien fleet was in complete chaos. Vextharian's ships were floating helplessly in space with most of their systems shut down. The aliens had technology that was thousands of years ahead of human science, but it was useless against whatever was happening to them. The alien commander tried to order his ships to retreat, but their engines were barely working. They were trapped in orbit around a planet that they had thought would be an easy conquest. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was still in her research center, watching her instruments record impossible readings. The energy coming from the ocean structure was beyond anything that human science could explain. It was putting out more power than the sun, but in a controlled and focused way. Elena realized that they were looking at technology that was far beyond anything humans or even the aliens possessed. The voice spoke again, and this time it was talking directly to the alien fleet. It told them that they had made a mistake coming to this world. Earth was under protection and had been for millions of years. The beings who had built the Guardian were older than the Galactic Dominion and more powerful than anything the aliens had ever encountered. The voice warned them that they should leave immediately or face consequences that they could not imagine. Vextharian tried to respond, but found that his communication systems would only work when the Guardian allowed them to work. He was no longer in control of his own ships. Whatever was down on that planet had taken over his entire fleet without firing a single shot. The alien commander realized that he had led his ships into a trap that had been waiting for them since before his species had discovered fire. On Earth, people were starting to understand that their planet was not as defenseless as they had thought. The Guardian that had risen from the ocean was there to protect them. It had been sleeping under the water for countless years, waiting for the day when Earth would need defending. That day had finally come, and the Guardian was awake and ready to show the galaxy that Earth was not a world that could be conquered easily. The Guardian decided that the alien invaders needed to learn exactly what they had challenged when they came to destroy Earth. Without any warning or visible effort, the massive structure reached across space with invisible forces and gently moved the entire Zephyrian fleet to the edge of the solar system. 3,000 alien warships that had been floating helplessly above Earth suddenly found themselves near the planet Pluto, billions of miles away from their target. High Admiral Vextharian felt his stomach drop as he realized what had just happened. His entire fleet had been transported across the solar system in the blink of an eye. The alien commander had conquered worlds with technology that could destroy planets, but he had never seen anything that could move entire fleets through space without using any visible method of transportation. The Guardian had simply decided that the alien ships should be somewhere else, and now they were there. The Guardian's voice followed the alien fleet across the emptiness of space and spoke directly into the minds of every alien soldier. The ancient protector told them that they were about to receive an education about the true nature of power in the universe. The Galactic Dominion thought they were strong because they had big guns and fast ships, but they were about to learn that real power came from understanding and controlling the fundamental forces that held reality together. What happened next made every alien in the fleet question everything they thought they knew about physics and technology. The Guardian reached out across space and began to rearrange the asteroid belt that floated between Mars and Jupiter. Massive chunks of rock and metal that had been drifting in random patterns for billions of years suddenly began moving into perfect geometric formations. The asteroids formed complex three-dimensional patterns that looked like mathematical equations, written in stone and iron. Vexitharian watched through his ship's telescopes as thousands of asteroids moved with impossible precision to create structures that stretched across millions of miles of space. Each asteroid moved to exactly the right position at exactly the right time. The alien commander had seen orbital engineering projects before, but nothing on this scale, and nothing with this level of precision. The Guardian was treating the entire asteroid belt like a construction project, but the Guardian was not finished with its demonstration. Next, it reached out to several comets that were traveling through the outer edges of the solar system and changed their courses. The icy chunks of rock and frozen gas suddenly turned and began flying towards specific positions around the sun. The Guardian was redirecting comets that weighed millions of tons and were traveling at incredible speeds like they were toys being moved around by a child. Dr. Maya Singh was a historian who studied the myths and legends of ancient civilizations. She was watching the Guardian's demonstration from Earth and suddenly realized that she was seeing something that had been recorded in human history thousands of times. Every ancient culture had stories about gods or spirits who could move mountains and control the heavens. Now Maya understood that these stories were not myths. They were historical records of previous Guardian demonstrations. The patterns that the Guardian was creating in space matched symbols that Maya had seen in Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mayan stone, carvings, Aboriginal cave paintings, and ancient Chinese texts. Every civilization on Earth had recorded the same geometric shapes and patterns. The Guardian had been showing these formations to humans for thousands of years, as a way of preparing them for the day when they would understand their true meaning. Maya realized that human religion and mythology were actually distorted memories of contact with the Guardian and other advanced civilizations. Stories about angels and demons, gods and monsters, visitors from the sky, and guardians of the earth were all based on real encounters that had been passed down through generations and changed over time. Humanity had been in contact with galactic civilization for much longer than anyone had realized. Captain Peter Walsh was still studying the technical data that the Guardian had transmitted to Earth's computers. As he watched the demonstration in space, Peter began to understand that the Guardian was not just showing off its power, it was teaching humanity about technologies that they would eventually need to master themselves. The precise control of gravitational forces, the ability to manipulate matter at a distance, and the power to move objects through space without rockets or engines were all techniques that humans would need to learn. The Guardian revealed that the solar system was not just a random collection of planets and asteroids. It was actually a carefully designed and maintained system that had been shaped over millions of years to support the development of life on Earth. The positions of the planets, the timing of their orbits, and even the composition of the asteroid belt had all been adjusted to create the perfect environment for life to evolve and civilizations to develop. The demonstration continued as the Guardian showed the aliens how it could control the sun itself. Solar flares that normally erupted randomly from the sun's surface suddenly began forming intricate patterns and designs. The massive explosions of energy that could destroy electronic equipment across entire star systems were being choreographed like a fireworks display. The Guardian was conducting the sun like a musician conducting an orchestra. Vexitharian finally understood what his science officer had been trying to tell him about the energy readings they had detected from Earth. The Guardian was not using technology in the way that the Galactic Dominion understood technology. It was not building machines that used energy to accomplish tasks. Instead, it was directly controlling the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear forces, and even space and time were tools that the Guardian could use as easily as Vexitharian could use his hands. The Guardian explained that the Galactic Dominion had been allowed to conquer the worlds they had taken because those worlds were not under protection. But throughout the galaxy there were thousands of worlds that were being watched over by Guardians like the one that protected Earth. Any civilization that tried to attack a protected world would face the same demonstration of power that the Zephyrian fleet was witnessing. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was coordinating with observatories around the world to record everything that the Guardian was doing. The scientific data being collected would take human researchers decades to fully analyze, but it was already clear that they were witnessing the application of physics principles that human science had not yet discovered. The Guardian was using techniques that were millions of years ahead of anything that humanity, or even the Galactic Dominion, possessed. Elena realized that the Guardian was essentially giving humanity a graduate-level course in cosmic engineering. By watching the demonstration, humans were learning how to manipulate space and time, how to control stellar phenomena, and how to move objects across interplanetary distances without conventional propulsion. The knowledge being demonstrated would eventually allow humanity to protect and improve entire star systems. The Guardian revealed that Earth was not the only world under its protection. Throughout the galaxy, there were other planets where young civilizations were developing under the watchful care of ancient protectors. Some of these civilizations had already graduated to become protectors themselves, while others were still learning and growing. Humanity was being invited to join this cosmic community as active participants rather than passive beneficiaries. The demonstration concluded with the Guardian showing the alien fleet a vision of what the galaxy could become if all civilizations chose cooperation over conquest. They saw images of worlds working together to solve problems that no single planet could handle alone. They witnessed civilizations sharing knowledge and resources to create technologies that benefited everyone. They observed species that had once been enemies becoming allies in the face of cosmic challenges that threatened all life. But the Guardian also showed them what happened to civilizations that chose the path of endless conquest and destruction. They saw worlds that had been consumed by their own weapon species, that had driven themselves extinct through warfare, and empires that had collapsed under the weight of their own aggression. The choice between cooperation and conquest was also the choice between survival and extinction. High Admiral Vextharian stood on his command bridge and felt smaller than he had ever felt in his entire life. The Guardian had shown him and his fleet powers that made their most advanced weapons look like primitive tools. The alien commander realized that he had two choices. He could return to the Galactic Dominion and tell them what he had witnessed, or he could continue to fight and face consequences that he could not even imagine. The choice was easy to make. Vextharian opened a communication channel to the Guardian and spoke with a humility that he had never shown before. He told the ancient protector that he understood the message and that he would carry word of Earth's protection back to his empire. But the alien commander also expressed doubt about whether his leaders would believe what he told them. The Galactic Dominion had never encountered anything that could challenge their power, and they might think his report was a lie or a sign of cowardice. The Guardian's response was both reassuring and terrifying. The ancient being told Vextharian that other civilizations would indeed come to test Earth's defenses. Some would be curious, some would be aggressive, and some would simply refuse to believe that such power existed. But each one would receive the same education that the Zephyrian fleet had just experienced. Those who learned from the demonstration would be allowed to leave. Those who refused to learn would be removed from the galaxy permanently. Before allowing the alien fleet to depart, the Guardian gave them one final gift. It showed them a vision of Earth's future that stretched thousands of years into the time ahead. The aliens saw humanity spreading across the stars not as conquerors like the Galactic Dominion but as gardeners and protectors. They witnessed human colonies that sheltered other developing species, human scientists who unlocked cosmic mysteries for the benefit of all life, and human diplomats who prevented wars before they could begin. The vision showed humans building great ships that could travel between galaxies in search of worlds that needed protection. It showed human engineers working with alien species to solve problems that threatened entire star systems. It revealed human teachers sharing knowledge with young civilizations who were just beginning to understand their place in the universe. Humanity's destiny was not to rule the galaxy but to serve as its guardians and protectors. Vextharian and his fleet were transported back to the edge of their own territory with a message for the Galactic Dominion. The Guardian had given them complete records of the demonstration along with technical data that proved the reality of what they had witnessed. But more importantly, the aliens carried with them a new understanding of what true power meant and what price would be paid for challenging the protected worlds. On Earth, the revelation that they were not alone, and had never been alone, changed human society in ways that no one could have predicted. Dr. Rachel Morgan led a team of social scientists who studied how quickly people adapted to the new reality. Instead of panic or despair, most humans felt a sense of relief and purpose. They were no longer struggling alone against a hostile universe, but were part of a vast community of civilizations working together for the common good. Jake Harrison found himself promoted from ship commander to admiral and placed in charge of forming Earth's first galactic defense force. The ships that were built using Guardian-enhanced technology were unlike anything that had ever existed in human imagination. These vessels could fold space to travel instantly between star systems, manipulate time to slow down or speed up processes, and project protective shields that could defend entire planets from attack. The new ships did not carry weapons designed to destroy, but rather tools designed to protect and preserve. They had systems that could restore damaged ecosystems, devices that could prevent asteroid impacts, and equipment that could stabilize the orbits of planets that had been knocked off course. Humanity's role in the galaxy was to be healers and guardians rather than warriors and conquerors. The Guardian began transmitting the locations of other protected worlds throughout the galaxy. Each world was home to a developing civilization that needed time and space to grow without interference from aggressive species like the Galactic Dominion. Some of these worlds had intelligent life that was just beginning to use tools, while others had civilizations that were on the verge of discovering space travel. All of them deserved the chance to develop naturally without outside interference. Humanity's mission became clear through the information provided by the Guardian. They were to become the mobile response force for the Galactic Protection Network. While the Guardians maintained their eternal watch over individual worlds, humans would patrol the spaces between stars, looking for threats and responding to emergencies that required immediate action. It was a responsibility that humanity accepted with both pride and humility. Captain Tony Rivera was among the first humans to take command of one of the new Guardian-enhanced starships. His vessel was called New Horizon, and it was equipped with technology that allowed it to detect distress signals from across the galaxy and respond within hours rather than years. Tony had been a pilot in Earth's Defense Force, but now he found himself exploring regions of space that no human had ever seen before. Tony's first mission took him to a star system where a young alien civilization was under attack by space pirates. The aliens had just developed radio communication and were sending desperate messages into space, asking for help that they did not expect to receive. When the New Horizon arrived and deployed its protective systems, the pirates found their weapons disabled and their ships gently but firmly escorted out of the star system. The young aliens watched in amazement as humans worked to repair the damage caused by the pirate attack. Tony and his crew used Guardian technology to restore their damaged cities, rebuild their communication networks, and even improve their agricultural systems. But more importantly, they showed the aliens that there were civilizations in the galaxy who would help rather than exploit those who were weaker or less advanced. As Tony prepared to leave the alien world, their leaders asked him why humans had come to help them. Tony explained that Earth had once been protected by the same Guardian network, and that it was now humanity's turn to extend that protection to others. He told them that someday, when their civilization was ready, they too might join the community of protectors and help shield other developing worlds from harm. Years passed and humanity settled into their new role as galactic guardians. Human colonies were established not to exploit new worlds but to serve as bases for protection operations. Human scientists worked with researchers from dozens of other species to develop better ways of preserving life and preventing conflicts. Human diplomats traveled between civilizations, helping to resolve disputes before they could escalate into wars. The Galactic Dominion still existed, but their expansion had been effectively stopped by the network of protected worlds. Some of their leaders had learned from Vexitharian's report and chose to focus their efforts on improving their own worlds rather than conquering others. But other members of the Dominion continued to test the boundaries of Guardian protection, and each time they were firmly but decisively turned away. Dr. Maya Singh established a new field of study called cosmic archaeology, which focused on finding and understanding the remains of ancient Guardian civilizations. Her research revealed that the pattern of protection and guidance had been repeated throughout galactic history. Young civilizations were protected and nurtured until they were ready to become protectors themselves, creating an endless cycle of guardianship that had preserved life in the galaxy for millions of years. The Guardian in Earth's oceans continued its ancient watch, but now it was no longer alone in its vigil. Human ships patrolled the space around Earth and the other protected worlds in the sector. Human colonies served as early warning stations and rescue bases. Human scientists worked constantly to improve the protective technologies that kept peaceful civilizations safe from those who would destroy them. Earth had found its place in the cosmic community not as rulers or subjects, but as equal partners in the great work of preserving and protecting life throughout the galaxy. The heavens no longer stood still in shock but moved in harmony with a new order that valued cooperation over conquest, wisdom over warfare, and protection over predation. Humanity had become what they were always meant to be, guardians of the galaxy and shepherds of peace among the stars. Dr. Alex Thompson had spent his whole career digging up old things that did not make sense. He was an expert at studying the remains of ancient civilizations, but he had always found strange objects that seemed too advanced for their time. Metal pieces that should not have existed thousands of years ago. Stone carvings that showed impossible geometric patterns. Tools made from materials that human science could not identify. For 20 years, Alex had collected these mysterious artifacts and tried to understand where they came from. Now, as Alex watched the massive structure rise from the Pacific Ocean, everything suddenly made perfect sense. All those strange objects he had found were pieces of technology left behind by the same beings who had built the Guardian. Every ancient civilization on Earth had stories about powerful guardians who watched over the world from hidden places. Alex had always thought these were just myths and legends, but now he realized they were historical records. Alex was in his laboratory when the Guardian's voice spoke in his mind. He was surrounded by dozens of artifacts that he had spent years trying to understand. Ancient metal fragments that hummed with energy when touched. Stone tablets covered with symbols that seemed to move when no one was looking. Crystals that glowed softly in the dark and felt warm to the touch. All of these things were suddenly making sense as pieces of Guardian technology. Dr. Claire Bennett was a scientist who studied quantum physics, which was the science of very tiny particles and how they behaved. Claire had been working with Alex to try to understand his strange artifacts using advanced scientific equipment. She had discovered that many of the objects were doing things that should have been impossible according to human understanding of physics. The materials were manipulating energy in ways that human technology could not duplicate. When the Guardian rose from the ocean, Claire's instruments went crazy trying to measure its energy output. The readings were so high that her equipment could not display them properly. The Guardian was producing more energy than a nuclear power plant, but it was doing so without any visible power source. It was somehow drawing energy directly from the fabric of space itself, which was something that human science said was impossible. Claire realized that the Guardian was not just using advanced technology, it was actually changing the laws of physics in the area around it. Space and time were behaving differently near the massive structure. Light was bending in strange ways. Gravity was fluctuating in patterns that made no sense. The Guardian was rewriting reality itself to make its technology work. High Admiral Vextharian was standing on his command bridge watching his officers panic as their ship systems continued to malfunction. The alien commander had conquered 17 star systems for the Galactic Dominion, but he had never encountered anything like the Guardian. His weapons would not fire, his engines barely worked, and his communication systems only functioned when the Guardian allowed them to. Vextharian felt completely helpless for the first time in his military career. The Guardian's voice spoke directly to the alien fleet, and its words made every alien on every ship freeze with terror. The voice explained that it represented a civilization that was millions of years older than the Galactic Dominion. The beings who had created the Guardian had been exploring the galaxy and protecting young civilizations since before Vextharians. Species had crawled out of the mud on their home world. The Guardian told the aliens that Earth was just one of thousands of worlds under its protection. Throughout the galaxy, there were other Guardians watching over other developing civilizations. The Galactic Dominion had been allowed to exist only because they had not yet threatened any protected worlds. But now, they had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Jake Harrison was still on the bridge of his ship, Valiant, watching the alien fleet float helplessly in space above Earth. His communication officer, Amy Collins, was trying to understand the massive amount of data that was suddenly being transmitted to their ship's computers. The Guardian was sending them information about advanced weapons energy shields faster than light travel and defensive systems that were thousands of years ahead of human technology. Amy told Jake that the information being sent to them would take human scientists decades to fully understand. The Guardian was essentially giving humanity a complete education in advanced physics, engineering, and space technology all at once. It was like being handed the keys to the universe after spending your whole life walking everywhere you wanted to go. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was coordinating with research stations around the world to track what the Guardian was doing to Earth itself. The planet's magnetic field was becoming stronger and more stable. The atmosphere was being cleaned of pollution by some unknown process. Weather patterns were becoming more predictable and less violent. The Guardian was not just protecting Earth from the alien invasion, it was actually improving the planet. Elena realized that the Guardian had probably been making small improvements to Earth for millions of years. Every major extinction event that had threatened life on the planet had probably been prevented or minimized by Guardian intervention. Asteroid impacts that should have destroyed all life had been deflected. Climate changes that should have killed everything had been stabilized. Volcanic eruptions that should have covered the world in ash had been controlled. The Guardian revealed that it had been subtly guiding human development for thousands of years. Every major breakthrough in human science and technology had been gently encouraged by Guardian influence. The development of agriculture, the invention of writing, the discovery of electricity, and the creation of computers had all been nudged along by the ancient protector. But the Guardian had not been controlling human development. It had simply been providing opportunities for humans to advance on their own. Humanity had shown remarkable creativity and problem-solving ability, which was why they had been chosen for protection in the first place. The Guardian's job was not to make humans dependent on its technology, but to help them reach their full potential as a species. Captain Peter Walsh was a military researcher who studied alien technology captured from previous encounters with hostile species. When the Guardian began transmitting technical data to Earth's computers, Peter was one of the first people to realize what they were receiving. The information included blueprints for weapons that could destroy entire fleets' defensive systems, that could protect whole star systems and engines that could travel between galaxies in minutes. Peter understood that the Guardian was not just protecting Earth for the sake of protecting it. Humanity was being prepared for something bigger. The technical data being transmitted suggested that humans were meant to become protectors themselves. They were being given the tools they would need to defend other worlds and other species from threats like the Galactic Dominion. The revelation changed everything about how humans saw their place in the universe. They were not alone, and they never had been. Earth was part of a vast network of protected worlds watched over by ancient guardians. But more than that, humans were being groomed to become active participants in galactic civilization, not as conquerors, but as protectors and defenders of peace. As the Guardian continued to transmit information to human computers, scientists around the world began to understand the true scope of what they were dealing with. The universe was full of ancient civilizations that had reached levels of technology and wisdom beyond human imagination. Some of these civilizations had chosen to become guardians and protectors, while others had become destroyers and conquerors. The Galactic Dominion represented the destructive path, while the Guardians represented the protective path, and humanity was being invited to join the protectors.